All right, so we're diving deep today, folks. Ready to get a little philosophical.
Always.
It's all about knowledge of self, and this book, it's a real collection of like wisdom bombs, essays, excerpts, all these different voices coming together. But the core idea is pretty simple, right? Knowing yourself is the key to, well, knowing everything.
Yeah, it's kind of like, think of it like building a house.
Oh, okay. I like where this is going.
Yeah, you wouldn't, start with the roof, would you?
Definitely not. Foundation
That's
first.
exactly. Self-knowledge is that foundation.
Yeah,
This book argues you can't build any other kind of knowledge without it.
that's a really solid analogy. It makes total sense. And speaking of foundations, there's this quote from Lord Jamar in the book. Really hit me. It all goes back to mathematics, and it all starts with knowledge. Knowledge is you. Whoa.
Right. Knowledge isn't just like facts in a textbook. It's about like who you are, your identity, your place in this whole universe. And that actually leads perfectly into something else the book digs into.
Hit me with it.
The idea of the original man and original woman representing, get this, God and Earth.
Okay, hold on. Original man is God. This is already getting interesting, a little intense, maybe.
It's a big concept for sure.
I mean, have you ever, like, been out in nature and felt this deep connection? Like, it's a part of you, almost like, you came from it.
Totally. And
Yeah.
that's what the book is getting at. Understanding where we really come from is key to understanding who we are now.
I can dig it.
There's this one excerpt by Waking Allah that compares life to being dropped in the middle of a jungle.
Oh, okay, I'm listening.
Imagine that, right? You're suddenly in this jungle. To survive, you got to know what's what. Like what can help you, what's dangerous, what to avoid completely.
So it's like we all have our own personal jungles to deal with, right? Maybe it's a toxic workplace, a bad relationship, or even just those negative thoughts that keep swirling around in your head. And the book's saying self-knowledge is the survival guide.
Yeah, exactly.
That's deep. What would you say is like the biggest threat in your own jungle?
That's a great question. It's definitely something I'm, still figuring out. But it makes me think about another key idea from knowledge of self. The subconscious mind. There's this line that really stuck with me. If you were to start investigating your subconscious thoughts, you could learn a lot about yourself. You could learn what makes you tick.
Okay, so we're not just talking about like our everyday thoughts. We're going deeper into the stuff we might not even be aware of.
Right. It's like there's this whole other world operating beneath the surface.
And we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg, right?
The book uses this analogy of car window tint. You think you're seeing everything clearly out the window, but that tint is actually filtering out a ton of light.
So our conscious mind is like the tinted window.
Yeah. It might be blocking out a whole lot of what's really going on inside.
That's a little freaky if you ask me.
But also kind of exciting, right?
I mean, yeah, if we could tap into that subconscious, who knows what we might learn. So many possibilities. Okay, before we get too lost in the subconscious, remember that whole original man and original woman thing representing God and Earth?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
There's more to unpack there. The book brings up this concept of the cipher, which shows up again and again.
Yeah, the cipher. It's a symbol of, like, wholeness, interconnectedness, everything going in cycles.
Kind of like life itself. Cycles, birth, death, rebirth.
Exactly. And you know what else? The cipher ties into these universal laws, especially cause and effect.
Like what you put out into the world comes back to you.
Exactly. The cipher is a visual representation of that.
Okay, that's starting to click. But can you give me an example? Like, how does the cipher connect to personal responsibility in a practical way?
Let's say you're always running late.
Oh, I know people like that. Right.
Right. Instead of blaming traffic or saying you're just not a morning person, what if you looked at it through the lens of the cipher and cause and effect? Maybe that lateness is a result of, not managing time effectively.
Or maybe you're overcommitting yourself, spreading yourself too thin.
Exactly. The cipher encourages you to look deeper, see those connections between your actions and the results you're getting.
I feel like I need to, like, meditate on this cipher for a while, let it sink in. Okay, so we've got self-knowledge as the foundation, subconscious mind lurking beneath the surface, and this whole concept of the cipher and universal laws at play. Where do we go from here?
Well, this is where things get really interesting and potentially controversial.
Oh, I love a good controversy. Lay it on me.
Next up, we're going to dive into one of the most talked about concepts in knowledge of self, the black man as God.
Okay, listeners, buckle up. Things are about to get real. We're going deep.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into knowledge of self. We left off on a pretty intense note, right?
Yeah, that whole the black man is God thing, it's definitely got my attention.
A loaded phrase, no doubt.
Yeah, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
But we're all about open minds here, so let's unpack it. What's the book actually saying?
So first off, it's important to understand that the book is using black in a broader sense, not just people of African descent.
Okay, so it's more inclusive than that.
Exactly. It's encompassing all non-white people.
More like the original people of the planet.
Exactly. And it's suggesting that they are the truest representation of God on earth.
Okay, I'm listening. This is a lot to take in. What's the reasoning behind that?
The book gets into some pretty deep historical arguments. Like, it points to all these dominant black civilizations throughout history, in Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Americas, all over the world.
So it's saying these civilizations were really advanced.
And they were the source of so much knowledge and advancement that later spread across the globe.
That's pretty different from the history I learned in school.
Right. A lot of what we're taught is very Eurocentric.
It's like that's just one side of the story.
Exactly. And this book is trying to present a more balanced perspective.
I like that.
And then there's this whole thing about the creation of the white race through a process called grafting.
Wait, grafting? Like with plants?
Yeah, it's a wild concept. The book brings up this figure named Yaqub, who supposedly engineered the white race through selective breeding. It's all pretty symbolic, but it's definitely thought-provoking.
It makes you wonder, like, where did these ideas come from, right?
Yeah.
What does it all mean?
Right, and it's not just about race. The book also talks about melanin, the pigment that gives skin its color.
Melanin.
It argues that melanin plays a big role in higher consciousness.
So, darker skin, higher consciousness.
It's a complex argument, but yeah, that's the basic idea.
This is a lot to process, but I'm starting to see how it all ties together. History, science, symbolism, all wrapped up in this idea of the black man as God. Okay, so we've got God. What about women? Where do they fit into this whole self-knowledge thing?
The book uses the term earth to represent women.
Earth.
Yeah, symbolizing their role as these nurturing, life-giving forces. Like, think about it. What would we do without women?
Pretty much nothing, right?
Right. It's about recognizing the vital role they play in sustaining life and creating the future. It also draws parallels between women and the planet itself.
So women are like Mother Earth.
In a way, yeah. It highlights the way the Earth sustains life and connects it to the responsibilities of motherhood.
That's a powerful image.
And the book goes even deeper. It talks about the Earth's magnetic field, the balance of land and water, even the way it reflects light.
Wow, it's like all these metaphors for womanhood.
Right. It's pretty amazing when you really start to think about it.
So we've got God and Earth, the original man and woman, representing these fundamental forces in the universe.
Exactly.
Where does education fit into all of this?
Education is huge in this book. It's seen as absolutely essential, especially for Black youth.
So knowledge is power.
Absolutely. And education is how you unlock that power. The book argues that it's the key to empowerment, to real social change, to breaking down mental barriers and overcoming oppression. It's not just about, like, blindly accepting what you're taught in school either.
Oh, yeah, we've all had those teachers who are just, like, reading from the textbook.
Exactly. This book critiques traditional education and advocates for alternative learning methods, especially for Black communities, methods that are more relevant and empowering.
Like what kind of learning do they have in mind?
Well, it's not super specific, but it's definitely focused on critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, things like that, not just memorizing facts.
I dig that. It's about learning how to think, not just what to think.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about God, Earth, and education. What about organized religion? How does knowledge of self approach that?
Get ready for this. It's pretty critical of organized religion, especially its reliance on blind faith and unquestioning obedience.
Ooh, that's going to ruffle some feathers.
Probably. But the book makes a good point. It pushes for a more rational, evidence-based approach to understanding truth and spirituality.
Instead of just blindly believing what you're told.
Right. There's one quote that really sums it up. Gods are children's blankets that get carried over into adulthood.
Wow, that's deep. It's like, are we clinging to these comforting beliefs even when they no longer serve us?
Exactly. It's a challenge to move beyond blind faith and seek understanding through knowledge and reason.
This is making me think about all sorts of things. What about the big one, though? Life after death. Does the book offer any insight into that mystery?
It does, and it takes a pretty unique approach. It rejects the traditional concept of an afterlife, focusing instead on the legacy we leave behind.
So it's not about heaven and hell.
Nope. It's about the impact we have on others, the actions we take, and the ripple effects that continue long after we're gone.
So it's about making the most of this life right here, right now.
Exactly. And he uses this analogy of breathing. Just like we breathe in and out, taking in what we need and releasing what we don't, we also contribute to the world and receive from it.
I like that. It's like we're all connected, even after death.
Right. And even after we die, our actions and their impact continue to circulate.
It's kind of beautiful in a way. Okay, we've covered so much ground here. God, earth, education, religion, life after death. Anything else we need to unpack?
There's one more concept I want to touch on. It's the idea of the black man as the father of civilization.
Whoa, okay. That's another big one.
It's definitely bold, but the book backs it up by looking at the history of ancient black civilizations and arguing that they were the source of many of the advancements that shaped the world.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, it talks about things like mathematics, astronomy, medicine, architecture, all these areas where black civilizations were making incredible strides long before European societies.
That's challenging a lot of assumptions.
It is, but
Yeah.
that's what this book is all about, questioning the status quo and offering a different perspective.
Okay, I'm getting that. But what about the devil? How does knowledge of self deal with that concept?
It's interesting, this book doesn't really focus on the devil as, like, a supernatural being.
So no pitchforks and red horns.
Nope. Instead, it sees the devil as a representation of the negative forces we face, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
Okay, so more like our inner demons.
Yeah, those fears, doubts, and negative patterns that hold us back from our full potential. It's about recognizing and confronting those devils so we can grow and evolve.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like we all have those battles going on inside.
Exactly. And the book is saying that personal responsibility is key to overcoming those challenges.
It's about owning your choices and actions.
Exactly.
We've covered a lot here, but is there anything else we need to touch on before we wrap up?
There's one more big idea. Community control.
Community control. What's that all about?
It's the idea that black people need to have control over their own institutions and resources.
Like schools, businesses, things like that.
Exactly. Especially in areas like education, economics, politics, healthcare. The book argues that this kind of control is essential for achieving true equality and liberation.
That's a powerful concept, and it definitely feels relevant given everything that's going on in the world right now.
You're right, and knowledge of self provides a really compelling framework for understanding these issues and working towards solutions.
It's about taking back power and creating a better future.
Exactly.
This has been an incredibly thought-provoking conversation.
I agree.
It feels like we've only just scratched the surface of what knowledge of self has to offer.
You're definitely right. There's so much more to explore here.
I bet our listeners are ready for more too. So join us for the final part of our deep dive into knowledge of self as we wrap up our exploration of these complex and fascinating ideas. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of knowledge of self, and man, this book has been a wild ride.
It has. So much to think about.
We've been through some heavy stuff. The black man as God, women as earth, community control.
A lot to unpack, for sure.
But if there's one thing that keeps coming back to me, it's the book's focus on, like, really thinking for yourself.
Yeah, that critical thinking piece. It's not about just accepting what you're told. It's about questioning, digging deeper, finding the evidence.
And then coming to your own conclusions. What about you? Has anything we've talked about, like, challenged your own beliefs or made you see things differently?
Oh, absolutely. This book has definitely pushed me to examine my own assumptions, be more open to different perspectives. It's all about that self-knowledge, right?
Totally. Like, it's not just about filling your head with facts. It's about understanding who you are, how you fit into the world, your potential.
And that connects back to those universal laws, especially cause and effect.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Their actions have consequences.
Oh.
Understanding that is so powerful.
You know what? You're right. And that's where education comes in, right? It's about getting the knowledge and tools to actually navigate life and make, like, informed choices.
Exactly. And it's not just about traditional education, though that's definitely important.
Yeah.
The book encourages us to seek knowledge from all sorts of sources, our own experiences, the wisdom of elders.
It's like learning is everywhere, right?
Think about it. Who are the people who have taught you the most valuable lessons? Could be a parent, a teacher, even a friend.
It's all education.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, now we've talked about some controversial things in this book. One that really stands out is that whole Black man as the father of civilization idea.
It was a bold statement for sure.
Yeah, it goes against a lot of what's taught in, mainstream history.
It does. But the book doesn't just throw that out there. It backs it up with historical evidence, showing the accomplishments and impact of Black civilizations. It's about reclaiming that narrative and celebrating those contributions.
It's like history is complex. There's more than one side to the story.
Exactly. And knowledge of self is about pushing us to see those different perspectives.
Ultimately, I think it's a call to action. It's about empowering yourself with knowledge, questioning the status quo, and then using that knowledge to make a difference.
I agree.
So if we had to, sum up this whole book in one sentence, what would it be?
I think it's this. Knowledge is power, but self-knowledge is the foundation for true empowerment. Understanding ourselves, our history, our place in the universe, that's how we unlock our potential and create a more just world.
Beautifully said. For our listeners who are feeling inspired, we'll have some resources in the show notes where you can learn more about knowledge of self.
Keep exploring, keep questioning.
And keep striving to be the best version of yourself.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive.
Peace.